Hello, welcome to Shambhavi Spectrum. My guest today is Miss Eva, who is the head of marketing of Havelock One Interiors. And before we proceed further with the talk and the discussion with her, I would like to quickly go over the website of Havelock One. And I like the tagline, "Consider it done," which is what they have used throughout, and they really believe in it as "consider it done." These are the key sectors that they have serviced. It's a beautiful website. They have some wonderful case studies, and there is a lot of information which is available here for anyone who wants to see. And for further information and talk with the head of the marketing, we will continue in the part 2 of this. Thank you. Hello, welcome to Spectrum. I have Eva, the head of marketing of Havelock One Interiors. And thank you so much for taking up with us your insights on marketing. Please give us a little bit background about how marketing happened to you.
So my name is Eva, and thank you so much for the honor of being here. And I'd like to kind of apologize because my mother tongue is not English, so sometimes I might struggle a little bit to express myself properly. So apologies to the audience and obviously to my really generous interview. So marketing, I guess, it kind of like happened to me in a very, very fortunate manner because I'm an incredibly, I would say, curious person and empathetic person. And I enjoy kind of, getting my head around kind of like technological issues as well as kind of like basic concepts of microeconomics and entrepreneurship. And I think marketing is like a wonderful kind of like crossroad of all these things because, I mean, in my personal definition, marketing was always about facilitating understanding between different stakeholders in the benefit of a company. And I think that is a wonderful opportunity, to look through the eyes of different parties that are somewhat invested into a corporation, into an institution, into a product, and kind of like try to understand how can you create and market value of engagement, right? Like, why would they contribute with their attention, with their resources, with their money, with their time? And I think, that is something that's really like has drawn me over time towards marketing because it really allows me to think about these things and kind of like, bring them all to the table.
That is so true. I believe that marketing is the bloodstream, goes into the arteries and veins of the organization and what keeps the organization going. And that's why I think I enjoy being a marketing faculty. So you're so right out there. Tell me a little bit about the product portfolio that you have and that you handle so that the audience gets a little bit of understanding as to what the company Havelock One is all about.
Yeah, so basically Havelock One Interiors has been around for about 20 plus years. And we're actually like a 100% subsidiary of one of the large family conglomerates here in the GCC. So initially, like Havelock One was born because that particular conglomerate needed a company to kind of like, facilitate their growth in the F&B, hospitality and retail space. And at that point in time, they actually invited a company from Europa, Havelock Europa or Havelock International, to kind of like, come over here and help them kind of like, set foot into these particular sectors. And after a certain period, they told them, okay, listen, we would love you to be a partner in our growth. However, in order to kind of like, make it like long-term beneficial, you actually need to set up shop here. And that actually led to the foundation of a company back then called Havelock AHI. So Havelock American Home Industries, which was kind of like, initially like a small joinery in Bahrain that grew over time. And then, I mean, basically, initially an independent company, they were acquired in 2006 by aforementioned family business. And ever since, I mean, like, we've done, I would say, maybe on the manufacturing side, about 80% of the work, and on the fit out side, about 30% of the work. However, I mean, of course, as like businesses shall not, in terms of risk management, right? You always need to somehow mitigate. And that also means that you need to diversify. And we had to diversify our client portfolio at the same time. So basically, I was asked to join Havelock One approximately 3 years ago in order to kind of establish the marketing department. Because before, of course, being mostly an in-house service provider, it was kind of a question of like a commercial question. It was not so much a question of marketing. So basically, I was asked to join and help Havelock One kind of like, develop the brand that eventually allowed us to tap much, much more into kind of like other businesses and into other clients. And basically, so as I already mentioned, so we do interior manufacturing. So we produce like bespoke fixtures, furniture and equipment for hotels, for restaurants, for kind of like, all these kind of like little retail stores that you find in the malls or kind of like independent developments. And at the same time, we also deliver the turnkey fit out. So basically, we have kind of like project management. We have a certain amount of like in-house workforce. So basically, those people that actually like turn the vision of an interior designer into an actual product.
Great. So you joined as head of marketing, yeah?
Yes.
And the day you entered your office, what was there? What was the situation like? You said that you wanted to develop a brand which was independent. And then, so how did you actually view it? What excited you at that point?
Well, I guess, I mean, you said earlier, right, that you're kind of like consulting for solopreneurs as well. And basically, when you do something like this, and I mean, like, obviously, Havelock AHI existed. It was not that it was something completely developed from scratch, but it was almost like I had the opportunity to join a startup that still, already had all the revenue streams in place. So I didn't need to worry about like, is there no more funding tomorrow and are we going to collapse? But at the same time, because I was like not 100% from the start, I had already engaged with a brand agency, to take the first steps for the rebranding. But basically, I think I could kind of like make it my baby to a certain extent. It was all about like defining what is our new logo? What is the message behind the new logo? What is our brand identity? What is the platform? What are the core messages that we want to kind of like communicate? It was about like, establishing like a catalog of content, because of course, when you don't have the right images, when you don't have the right kind of like information about each and every individual product, how do you market something? So it was literally the opportunity to almost build something from scratch without kind of having the downside, the risk that you would normally have if you were working for a startup.
So that is wonderful. So you did have an amount and you were told that, yes, Eva, this is yours, and you can decide how you go about, kind of using it. And so how much time did it take you actually to decide on these things? And did you consult with others? Did you take input? And how did you proceed with the brand? And in fact, one of the questions I was going to ask you is, if I know you're a B2B, but is there somewhere where if I go, I can see Havelock One Interior and I know that this is B2B? Are you there something where the brand would reach somebody who doesn't know about Havelock One Interiors?
Well, I mean, like we have manufactured for about 1,100 Starbucks stores. So no matter which Starbucks you walk into in this region, I mean, like, even like we've manufactured for Russia, for Turkey. So basically, the moment you enter a Starbucks, for example, the counter has been manufactured in our factory. So, I mean, of course,
it's wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate the insight. I think that is the kind of insight which I'm hoping to share with all. And it's very, thank you. I would look at Starbucks in a new view now when I go in. So coming back to our point, yes, please go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Just a side note on Starbucks. I mean, even if you look at the Starbucks brand, right? Like initially, Starbucks had an approach to look exactly the same everywhere. And, at a certain point, I mean, like it was nice to kind of have that global approach to things. But then suddenly, you know, people were like trying to have a more individualistic experience. And I mean, of course, you know, especially when you have been to business schools and stuff like that, I mean, Starbucks is always the brand with so many aspects that you can talk about, you know, how it came about and how that idea from Italy was brought over to the US, to Seattle, etc., etc. And basically, if you look at Starbucks now, especially like, you know, the Reserva stores, or for example, we manufactured a walnut counter for the Starbucks coffee suite in the Four Seasons Hotel in Kuwait. I mean, you know, you suddenly see how such a kind of like, I would say, household brand came to life and decided to kind of like, you know, take a more individualistic approach, because it's so much more than just a coffee cup. And the quest of the customer, you know, for the more has become more and more elaborate over time. And of course, with that, our approach to things has become more elaborate, because we needed to use much more advanced manufacturing technologies, you know, 3D modeling, etc., in order to kind of like, you know, evolve our ability to deliver the same time as Starbucks was evolving.
Okay, so in FMCG, it's very easy to identify that where somebody is advertising or promoting or sponsoring events. How do you go about it? And do you take a decision as to what kind of budget allocations, or do you just go with the flow? Do you have, how does it work? Tell me that, please.
Well, I mean, like, so basically, right, like, no matter if you're working for B2B or for B2C, you always need to understand who's your target group and where are the potential touch points with this target group, and where can I be in front of the target group with as little waste as possible, right? That's why this entire kind of like, well, management, media planning was like discovered, or kind of like why it evolved over time, because at the end of the day, we need to make sure that we put the money where the eyeballs are, relevant eyeballs. And I mean, like, that is one of the reasons, for example, why out of home in our particular area is not necessarily relevant, or I would say not necessarily recommended, because I mean, you know, you can have your banner on Sheikh Zayed Road, and of course, you know that, I mean, I don't have the statistics with me, but probably, like, you know, you have your 500,000 people going underneath the bridges every day. But the person who is a relevant decision maker for us is probably, I don't know, you know, an investor into a new hotel project, or I don't know, like a consultant. And would they necessarily watch outside, or are they sitting in the back, you know, of their limousine and doing work? So you always need to understand, and that is why I was talking about the empathy earlier, right? You need to understand, where's your particular stakeholder group coming from, and where are they going, and where can you possibly, you know, slot yourself in. So, I mean, for us, I would say one of the most important platforms is definitely the trade media. So in my field, it's kind of like your commercial interior design magazine, it's your identity magazine, or it's your kind of like Design Middle East. So particular kind of like platforms where you know at least the chances that they eventually end up in front of a relevant consultant, in front of a relevant designer, who's eventually your gatekeeper, are much higher than, you know, if I went for a newspaper. Because, I mean, of course, everybody picks up the newspaper, but I pay for every reader in the newspaper. And the question is, what percentage of that particular readership is actually relevant to me and to my next sale? So you just need to, and of course, you know, being an SME, you have much less budget, because your approach should not be push, your approach should be pull. So you need to bring much more, I would say, brain work into the entire equation, and really, like, you know, go thoughtful about where you spend and how you spend, than if it was just about, okay, you know what, I don't know, I'm Colgate, or I'm kind of like the next, I don't know, shower gel, and I know I need to have a certain frequency on TV or in certain general interest magazines in order to meet my target audience.
Okay, so is there some way that you use tracking, any kind of tracking method you use in your conversations with your potential customer or your customers once they become? Do you use any tracking methodology?
I mean, like, we actually, like, as part of this entire kind of like rebranding process, we were also looking at customer experiences, and it kind of like, you know, understanding where we can possibly pivot that process. So we started working with a platform called Qualtrics, which also kind of like, allows you a lot in terms of like customer feedback and really trying to understand, how we can manage that process better and make it more like the analysis of it more quantitative than qualitative. Because of course, I mean, like the longer you work in a particular industry, the more you have like a gut feeling or an intuition what works and what doesn't work. And especially then again, going back to the niche, our problem is very often, we can't do really A/B testing because we don't have that quantity of a basis that would allow us to, okay, let's try this approach, let's try that approach, and then compare. We just don't have the numbers to make it like really statistically relevant. So, I mean, of course, at the end of the day, right, like retention is very, very important because it lowers the acquisition costs. So since we have worked for different F&B brands, and of course every time that a customer comes back and says, oh, you've done a wonderful job at this kind of like, I don't know, duty free, do you mind kind of like also doing the similarly wonderful job for us at XYZ Mall? That really like helps us and encourages us. And we did have a couple of clients in the past where one single project then turned into 5 projects, into 7 projects. And of course, that is where then, marketing supports that entire process of like the learning curve of, lowering the overall costs, etc. Because of course, the moment you go into quantities, and I think one of those kind of core projects that we're really proud of and that we've also submitted for awards this year is the NBB, the National Bank of Bahrain. So basically, they kind of like developed a new brand concept and they wanted to roll it out across their branches as well. And we had done a little bit of work in their headquarters in Bahrain. And then literally kind of like, phase by phase, they allocated more and more of their branches to us. And now we're even working on one of their projects here in Dubai at MR Square. So it clearly demonstrates, that you kind of like when you deliver and the customer is happy with your performance, it clearly helps because it paves the way for your future revenue. And I think that is also another thing that I would like to talk about. So, when you're talking about marketing, you're not just talking about kind of clients, customers. You're trying to understand with your stakeholders, of course, like internal stakeholders, your employees, future employees, are they capable to deliver what you promise in your campaigns? So and then, for example, something like employer branding comes into the equation. So it's suddenly like your mindset shifts and you try to understand, okay, how can I get the right project manager? How can I get the right joiner to be with us? And these are processes where obviously, I mean, you were asking earlier, did I take any advice or anything? I mean, marketing is a process where you have like so many people that are part of the journey because, I mean, you need to get their buy-in. You need to understand what they're doing in order to understand what is your particular USP, depending on what you're trying to sell. And of course, you take on board external expertise, you take on board consultants, agencies, but at the end of the day, nobody can do your job for you. And the thinking and the kind of like, drawing conclusions, like, bringing your creativity and your knowledge into the equation, that is something really, really important.
So I wish you all the best. You said you submitted for an award, so I wish you all the best. And I'm sure my audience and I would be very happy and glad when you're standing receiving it. And even otherwise, well tried is what is more important. And I'm so happy to learn that you have the internal stakeholders are equally important as the external stakeholders. So one thing which I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you are not data driven. You can't be data driven because of the nature of the job that you have. So is there still any small numbers which you use and which you review on a regular basis?
But I mean, like, I would not necessarily say that I can't be data driven, but I would say maybe, in terms of like, the spectrum, we might not have exactly reached that level yet, where I can then really say, okay, you know what, this is now we're ready, to take that leap and become more analytical than we are. So I think eventually we will evolve in that direction, and tools like Qualtrics they definitely help us. I mean, like our IT department has done a tremendous job in digitizing our entire processes. So of course, we now started implementing dashboards that help us also, to define where are the problems, where are the obstacles, where are the solutions, etc. I mean, like at the moment, I think, my core data definitely comes from typical data sources. So kind of like, your Google Analytics. I mean, like, obviously we are wherever, like when it comes to social media, etc., we try to understand who is like, coming to our platforms, how much time are they spending on our platforms? Because again, it's not just necessarily about the data as such, it's always about trying to understand how do you connect the dots. And I definitely might not necessarily, be the best person to give you like a full SPSS analysis of these type of things. But again, I think it's always about like trying to understand why are you doing what you're doing. And that very often, already leads the way. And then it really depends on your personal capabilities or the resources that you have access to leverage that and kind of like, drive it towards a fruitful outcome.
So I think as you become higher level up into the management, rather than trying to do working with the data, interpreting it, understanding it, and then applying it becomes more important rather than actually doing the grassroots work is what is my understanding. And in line with this, and the term buzzword which goes on nowadays is innovation. So is there any innovation in marketing that you have done specifically to highlight the company's product or their range or anything which you have done in terms of marketing of that in something which you've innovated now?
I mean, I think I would lie if I was trying to kind of like, sell us as the most innovative kind of like marketing team ever. I mean, like, obviously, we're trying to kind of like push the bar a little bit, like, but in the small things, because I mean, currently, literally, like we're marketing of a team of 2. And so, for us, it's kind of like, how to get a GIF onto like a social media story on Instagram or something like that. That's our level of innovation. But of course, I mean, we're trying to use the spectrum that we can possibly have access to. So it's about again, when it comes about like sending out emailers, etc. I mean, I'm always flabbergasted. How many emails do I receive from companies that want to sell me their web development services, and then they have a Gmail account, and I'm like, so hold on, if you're trying to sell me a web design, why were you not capable to kind of implement your own website? So yeah, I'm afraid.
So that's before they start recommending it to others on how the website development can be done. That's a very nice. Yes, you were saying something else.
Yeah. So sorry. Yeah. So basically, I mean, in general, like people try to always kind of come up with innovation in order to like sell the concept. I mean, like very often it's kind of like the consultants that say, oh, this is so innovative. And then like you look at it and you understand, oh, actually, it's not that innovative. It's just kind of like, a new label and maybe like a new cover page, but the content is still the same. So, I mean, I would say, again, if you stay true to the basic principles of, trying to help your audience, your target group, to achieve their own goals better and faster. And if you're capable, to kind of like deliver quality and really like, live up to your promises, I mean, everything else is kind of like, the gift wrapping. But I think you should first of all, and I think that is also, what we've been trying to do in the last 3 years, focus on the substance, ensure that the substance is there. And then you can start thinking about, okay, how to pivot, how to reach the next level. And I think, we're still kind of like in that process to a certain extent.
I think that's a very important message that you have given, that the basic value, the belief that should remain. And then the second thing which you said about empathy, I think it is really very important, because rather than thinking about yourself, the minute you start thinking about the the solutions seem to be what the customer need is, and not what you need in terms of revenue or anything else. So I think that's something very nice. And I think it also, Eva, I really wish to appreciate the fact you mentioned to me that you were a part of Daughter of the Emirates. Would you like to share some insight about that? So it would be interesting as to what your role was and how you helped the non-profit organization that.
Yeah, so E7 Banat Al Emirat is, I mean, like this year they also had to pivot because of COVID-19, right? But in the last 5 years, it was basically a program that was kind of like, I would say, an incubator for social impact projects, very much focused on young women, majority Emirati and kind of like a minority long-term daughters. So kind of like, you know, your typical kind of like expat, maybe second generation Indian, Pakistani. I have to admit, I mean, like, you know, the entire Desi girls, they all, because it was unbelievable. I mean, you know, the way that they were running their projects, I was always so impressed. But basically, so the concept was this incubator program lasts for 9 months. And the young women are taught the principles of design thinking. And with that, then they're sent into like different workshops about budgeting, about, you know, pitching, about like KPIs, trying to kind of like make an idea into like a tangible project that eventually meets certain impact criteria. And if after these 9 months they have kind of created a valuable project that has benefited their communities, then they actually get to graduate. And yeah, of course, like the last class, the class of 2020, unfortunately, was hit with COVID-19. But at the same time, you know, they all had to pivot. They suddenly had to kind of like take their concepts that they had about workshops. I mean, some of them, you know, they were doing like skills workshops with teenagers at the middle school. They were doing, I don't know, one team, purely Emirati from Abu Dhabi. They did workshops that were like improving the awareness for people of determination, like, you know, from teaching sign language to other things. And initially, you know, it was all very physical and all very face to face. And of course, suddenly they had to pivot and find some kind of like, you know, an online expression of these ideas. And it was actually quite impressive to see how these women, you know, that are all between like 18 and 25, managed to rise up to the challenge after initially being very much confused by the COVID-19 situation, like everyone. But, you know, yes, that they had the creativity and that they had the zeal to make it happen. That was very impressive. And so basically, I was a mentor with the program before. And in the last 1.5 years, I was kind of like in charge of like the marketing, the communications. So during the lockdown, I was actually using the time to redesign the website. So I got myself, because, you know, we were stuck at home anyway. And of course, you know, with kind of like the reduced workload initially, I decided to kind of like, you know, look into the different like WordPress templates, find out like, you know, whatever was possible, and then like just make it happen. So you can actually find them www.poag.com, which is.
So I actually looked up their website. Maybe I should just share it here, because I did look up their website. And isn't this is the website? Is that right?
Yes, that's the website. Yeah, so at the moment they're looking for volunteers. So in case anybody would like to join for the volunteer call, yeah, that's the website. And for example, here, the beauty was, because throughout these 5 years, you know, they kept on collecting images. I mean, they always had photographers, and that clearly helped so much, because it was really like, you know, so much easier to tell all these stories when you had these beautiful girls, you know, smiling at you, laughing. I mean, you see these girls like, you know, evolve so much within the 9 months, and I would say that is probably, you know, the most rewarding experience about it all, that you just see that they want to make a difference. They have these incredible intentions, and you just need to give them a couple of tools, and then they just go with it. And
but I'm so impressed. You've done the website so well. I had no idea. And since I knew a little bit that you have volunteered with them, I said, okay, let me just take a look at what it is. Congratulations on the great job, Eva. And really, I really wish you all the very best. Do you have any last before we wrap up for today. And I know I have taken much more of your time than what we had originally decided on. Thank you. I appreciate that. Do you have any message, anything which you would like to share with the audience?
Well, I think, very often people take working in the UAE as a marketing person as a massive challenge, right? Because it's so much, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's so cute.
Apologies. It's so much harder.
Most welcome visitor.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, that's another thing, throughout the lockdown. I mean, we just took on so many animals. It clearly gives some purpose, but
Yes.
to put that aside, yeah, so the UAE is quite challenging, right? Because it's an incredibly diverse society. I mean, in general, right, like in Europe and probably also like in other societies that I'm not as familiar with, people say now we have so many subcultures. It's really, really hard, to find that target group where you feel like, okay, I can make a difference with my my campaign, with my brand ambassadors, etc. And of course here, like, when you're a Bollywood fan, I mean, I don't know a single actor from Bollywood. So when suddenly these people appear on posters, I have no idea. And so therefore, of course, it's so much more challenging in this society, right, to kind of like do something meaningful that has an impact across the different communities. But at the same time, I would say for me, Dubai is a phenomenal platform to really like learn so much more about people. And again, that brings me back to empathy, because you can speak to anybody, right? I mean, like, you can speak to somebody in the DIFC, who earns a salary that you probably can't even fathom. But you can also, like, have a wonderful dialogue with, like, I don't know, a Filipino lady that you meet on the bus. And I think in that sense, Dubai is an incredible laboratory to experiment. And if I've learned something from my past, for example, with Panasonic, when I was doing market research, very often, again, yes, of course you can do focus groups, and yes, of course you can do, I don't know how many like surveys, etc. But at the end of the day, go out there, speak to people, understand and connect the dots, try to understand the depth of their issues, of their needs, of their wants, and then try to see how you can kind of match that with a relevant solution. And that is, at the end of the day, the process of marketing. And I think in that way, Dubai is incredibly enriching.
I think you've given a very valuable input that you need to be with your customer, or you need to be with people to understand what actually motivates them, rather than just trying to analyze them through a very structured format. So while structured has its own value, the unstructured contributes in a very big way, especially like the empathy factor that you mentioned. Thank you so much, Eva. It's been such a pleasure. And I hope to connect, and I'm definitely going to give you the feedback from my audience, which we get. And thank you so very much. Have a lovely day, and look forward to seeing more growth on all personal and professional front. Thank you again.
You have a wonderful evening, and my best regards to your audience.
Thank you. Thank you so much.